always thought weddings were supposed to be about love, joy, and family coming together. For me, it felt different from the very beginning. My name is Clara, and for most of my life, I felt like I was living in the shadow of my older sister, Emily. She was the golden child. Perfect grades, perfect smile, perfect fiancée. My parents adored her, especially my mother. But me, I was just there. When I met Daniel 3 years ago, it felt like I had finally found someone who saw me for who I was. Not Emily's younger sister. Not the quiet girl in the corner. Just Clara. He made me laugh, encouraged me, and believed in me. So when he proposed, I thought maybe, just maybe, this was my chance to finally have a moment that was mine. The weeks leading up to the wedding were full of chaos. Flowers, dresses, catering, endless details. But instead of excitement, I constantly felt tension. My mother criticized every choice I made. Roses. Really, Clara? They're so common. Your dress makes you look tired. Why didn't you pick something brighter? Daniel is nice, but are you sure he's good enough for our family? Every comment chipped away at me, but I pushed forward. I wanted this wedding to be about love, not arguments. Daniel noticed the stress but always told me, "Don't let them steal your day. This is about us." The rehearsal dinner was supposed to be simple, a gathering with close family and friends before the big day. The hall was decorated softly, with strings of fairy lights glowing across the walls. Guests laughed, wine glasses clinked, and for a moment I allowed myself to breathe. But my mother was watching me with those sharp eyes. I knew that look. She was waiting to pounce. Emily stood beside her, radiant as always, wearing a dress that looked more suited for the actual wedding than the rehearsal. People swarmed around her, complimenting her beauty, asking about her new promotion. Meanwhile, I was the bride, yet it felt like Emily was still stealing the spotlight. When it came time to practice walking down the aisle, my father took his role seriously. He held my arm and whispered, "You look beautiful, sweetheart." For a moment I felt loved. Then my mother leaned in. Her hand brushed my arm, and with a cold smile on her face, she whispered in my ear, "You're a mistake, Clara. You always were. And tomorrow, everyone will see it." The words sliced through me like a knife. I froze, nearly stumbling on my gown. My father didn't notice. He was focused on the coordinator's instructions. But I felt my chest tighten, my throat close. My mother pulled back, her expression calm and composed, as if she hadn't just shattered me in front of the world. I wanted to scream, to demand why she would say something so cruel, especially now. But the hall was full of relatives, Daniel's family, and friends from college. They were laughing, clapping, rehearsing their roles in the ceremony. No one could know what had just happened. I forced a smile and walked forward, but inside my heart was breaking. Later during dinner I barely touched my plate. Daniel squeezed my hand under the table. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. I wanted to tell him everything. I wanted to tell him how my mother had humiliated me, how she had taken the happiest moment of my life and poisoned it. But instead I forced another smile. "I'm fine," I whispered. My mother raised her glass and gave a speech about family, loyalty, and the importance of choosing wisely. People clapped, oblivious to the venom underneath her words. I sat there silent, my jaw tight. The night dragged on, and as guests left one by one, I replayed her words in my head. "You're a mistake." By the time I reached my apartment, I was trembling. Daniel kissed me goodnight, still unaware of the storm inside me. I locked the door, sat on the floor, and finally let the tears fall. Why did she hate me so much? Was I really such a disappointment? Did she wish Emily were the one getting married instead of me? But beneath the sadness, something else began to rise inside me. Something stronger. Anger. For years I had swallowed her insults, allowed her to treat me like I was nothing. I thought keeping peace was more important than fighting back. But this time was different. She chose my wedding, my one day of joy, to break me down. And I promised myself as I wiped my tears away, that she would not win. Not this time. She thought I was a mistake. But in 48 hours she would face the truth. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my mother's words echoing over and over in my head. You're a mistake. You always were. They weren't new words. Not really. She had never said them so directly before, but she had hinted at them all my life. When I was 8 years old, I overheard her telling a neighbor that I was an accident. She laughed it off, calling it a joke, but the look on her face told me it wasn't. From then on, I carried the belief that I wasn't supposed to exist. Emily, on the other hand, was their miracle. My parents planned her, adored her, and celebrated her every achievement. I grew up watching the way my mother's eyes lit up when Emily walked into a room. When Emily got into a prestigious university, my mother cried tears of joy. When I got into an average one, she barely nodded. At family dinners, my opinions didn't matter. Family wanted chicken, we ate chicken. Family wanted steak, we had steak. I learned early on to stay quiet, to take whatever scraps of attention I could get. But deep inside, resentment grew. I tried to earn her love, bringing home good grades, cleaning the house, cooking dinner. Nothing worked. If Emily did the bare minimum, she was praised. If I gave my all, I was met with silence. By the time I met Daniel, I was starving for love. He gave me the kindness I had craved for years, and I clung to it. I thought maybe my wedding would finally be the day my mother looked at me with pride. But she didn't. She looked at me with contempt. The next morning, I sat with a cup of cold coffee in my hands, staring out the window. Daniel was busy making calls about the photographer and the catering. He hummed to himself, happy, oblivious. I wanted to tell him, but I couldn't bring myself to. What would I even say? My mother whispered I was a mistake at my rehearsal dinner. Sounded childish. Petty. But it wasn't. It was a knife to my soul. Later that afternoon, Emily called. Hey, Clara, she said cheerfully. I wanted to make sure you're okay. Mom seemed tense yesterday. And that was her word. Forced a laugh. I'm fine. Just tired. Well, tomorrow's the big day, she said. You must be nervous. Don't worry, Mom just wants everything to be perfect. Perfect. Perfect for Emily. Perfect for appearances. Never for me. When I hung up, the anger that had simmered all night began to boil. My mother wasn't going to ruin this for me. She wasn't going to whisper poison into my ear and walk away unscathed. Not again. So I began to think. What could I do? How could I turn the tables without destroying myself in the process? The idea came slowly, like a candle flickering to life in a dark room. My mother had always cared about one thing above all else: reputation. She lived for what other people thought. She wore designer clothes, kept our house spotless, and bragged about Emily's successes at every social gathering. She wanted the world to believe she had the perfect family. But the truth was far from perfect. And if there was one thing I knew, it was that secrets always find their way out. I thought about the letter I had found years ago, tucked in a drawer in my parents' room. A letter from a man named Richard, someone my mother had been seeing before she married my father. The dates overlapped. The timelines didn't add up. For years I wondered if Emily's father was really my father at all. I never had the courage to confront her. Till now. Plan began to form. I didn't know the full details yet, but I knew the wedding would be my stage. If my mother wanted to humiliate me on the happiest day of my life, then she would learn what humiliation truly felt like. That evening I went to see my father. He sat on the porch with a glass of iced tea, staring at the garden. "Dad," I said softly, sitting beside him. He looked at me with kind eyes. "You seem troubled, Clara. Everything okay?" I hesitated. My father wasn't cruel like my mother. He was quiet, gentle, but distant. He let her run the household, and I always wondered if he noticed the way she treated me. "Dad, can I ask you something?" said. "Of course. Do you ever regret having me?" His eyes widened. What? Mo? Why would you ask that? I looked down, twisting my hands. Because sometimes it feels like Mom. I trailed off. He sighed deeply. Your mother, she has strong opinions. But Clara, you're my daughter. I love you. His words warmed me, but they weren't enough. Love whispered in private was not the same as love shown in public. When I left, I felt even more determined. If no one would defend me, I would defend myself. The night before the wedding, I sat in my room with my phone in my hand. I pulled out the old letter I had kept hidden in my drawer for years. I had scanned it once, long ago, and now I opened the digital copy. The words were clear. I miss you, Margaret. I don't care if you marry him. I'll always know what we had. Margaret. My mother's name. I smiled for the first time in 2 days. Tomorrow my mother would finally face the truth. She would look at me and realize I wasn't the mistake. She was. And I wasn't afraid anymore. The morning of the wedding arrived with golden sunlight streaming through the curtains of my hotel room. I had barely slept. My mother's whisper still replayed in my mind like a haunting melody. You're a mistake. But today the truth would come out. I looked at myself in the mirror, wearing the simple yet elegant white dress I had chosen. It wasn't the most expensive gown, but it was mine, and it reflected who I was. Someone who had fought through pain, judgment, and rejection to stand here today. Zachary knocked softly on the door. Are you ready? I smiled faintly. More ready than ever. He entered, his eyes full of concern. You don't have to do this, you know. We can just get married quietly and let the past stay buried. I shook my head. No, Zach. She has humiliated me for too long. She's treated me like an unwanted burden. If I don't speak today, I'll always regret it. Today isn't just about our love. It's about the truth. The ceremony begins. The small chapel filled with soft music as the guests arrived. Family, friends, and relatives filled the wooden pews, chatting in low voices. Everyone was dressed in their finest clothes, their eyes curious and expectant. My mother sat near the front, wearing a proud smile that seemed almost too perfect. Nobody would guess the venom she carried behind that smile. As the ceremony began, Zach and I walked down the aisle together. My heart pounded not just with love but with determination. I knew what I had to do. The pastor began his words about love, unity, and vows. But as he asked if anyone had words to share before the union, I raised my hand. Gasps echoed around the chapel. Brides didn't usually interrupt their own ceremonies. I'd like to say something, I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my chest. The pastor hesitated, then nodded. My speech. I turned to face the crowd. All of you are here to celebrate love today, and I am grateful. But before I take this step, I need to share something that has weighed on me for years. I paused, letting my eyes rest on my mother. She shifted uncomfortably but still wore her smile. My whole life, I believed I was a burden. Believed I was less. Why? Because the woman sitting right there, I pointed gently at my mother, made me believe it. Gasps filled the room. My mother's face froze, her smile vanishing. 2 nights ago at my rehearsal dinner, she whispered in my ear, "You're a mistake." It wasn't the first time she said it. It's something I've lived with since I was a little girl. The chapel grew tense, silent except for a few murmurs. My mother stood up, her face red. That's not true. She's twisting my words. I raised my hand calmly. I expected you to deny it. But that's why I have proof. I turned toward the screen at the front of the chapel. Zach gave the signal. A video began to play. Evidence. The video wasn't long. Just a short clip captured at the rehearsal dinner by Zach's cousin, who had been filming for fun. But it was enough. It showed my mother leaning close to me, her lips moving. The sound wasn't crystal clear, but the words were unmistakable. You're a mistake. Gasps turned into shocked whispers. Family members turned to look at her, some in disbelief, some in disgust. Her face drained of color. "That's not what I meant. It was a joke. You all know I joke." But nobody believed her. Not anymore. The truth revealed. I took a deep breath. "You've treated me like an outsider my whole life. But today I want everyone here to know something. I found letters from my grandmother before she passed away. Letters that told me the truth about why you resented me." I held up a bundle of faded envelopes. "She said you were jealous. Jealous because my father loved me more than he loved you. She said you blamed me for his leaving. And that's why you tried to convince me I wasn't enough. That's why you called me a mistake." The audience was silent. My mother shook her head wildly, her hands trembling. "Those letters are lies. My mother hated me. Don't believe her." But her panic only made her guilt clearer. My revenge. I stepped closer to her, but my voice was calm, almost soft. "You wanted me to break. You wanted me to live my life small, ashamed and silent. But today I'm standing tall. Today I'm marrying the man I love, surrounded by people who accept me. And you've lost the mask you always wore." My mother's lips trembled. For the first time she looked powerless, vulnerable. "You always told me I was a mistake. But the real mistake was yours, thinking I'd never find my strength." With that I turned back to Zach, who stood by my side, pride in his eyes. The guests erupted into supportive applause. Some even shouted words of encouragement. "You're brave. We love you, Anna." My mother sank back into her seat, covering her face with her hands. The wedding continues. The pastor, though clearly shaken, gently brought the ceremony back on track. Zach and I exchanged vows, our voices steady, our hearts full. When he said, "You may now kiss the bride," the guests cheered loudly. It wasn't just a wedding, it was a victory. I looked around the chapel, feeling lighter than I ever had. For once, I wasn't hiding. I wasn't carrying the weight of my mother's cruelty. I was free. The aftermath. Later at the reception, family members avoided my mother. Aunts, uncles, cousins. They all whispered about the years of coldness they had witnessed but never understood. Now they did. Some came up to me, apologizing for not seeing it sooner. Others simply hugged me tightly, saying, "You deserve happiness." As for my mother, she left early. Her pride couldn't handle the truth. But I didn't care. For the first time in my life, her absence felt like peace. Final reflection. That night, as Zach and I danced under twinkling lights, I whispered to him, "Do you think I went too far?" He smiled softly, pressing his forehead to mine. "No, Anna. You didn't go too far. You finally gave the truth a voice. And now, you're free to live your life without her shadow." Tears filled my eyes. Not of sadness, but of release. I realized then that revenge isn't always about hurting the one who hurt you. Sometimes it's simply about exposing the truth, reclaiming your power, and walking away stronger. And that's exactly what I did.